With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
We're going inside them. We're going outside them. Inside them and outside them. Fight, 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 fight. What do you say, man?
Thing to do isn't to punch them, isn't to talk to them. There's only one way you get respect, and that's by looking somebody in the eye for 60 minutes.
It was a great game for college football.
And Notre Dame is going to go for 2 points. They're going to try to win it. Steenberg is going back to throw. He throws the end zone. It's caught by Sweeney. Notre Dame has taken the lead over Purdue.
Well, we got on this roll, and this team that was 4-7 and 4-7, they started believing in one another, started caring for one another, and it's amazing what happens when you don't care who gets the credit. They took off.
On this week's episode of Kileleni to the Summit, we have a conversation with Houston Nutt, who is a longtime coach, finished his college career in the SEC at Ole Miss and Arkansas, a head coach at both of those places. Has some incredible stories here about being recruited by Bear Bryant and Art Broyles. Just very memorable moments in this conversation you have with him. But Patrick, how did you meet Houston Nutt, and what were your experiences with him?
You know, actually, kind of a roundabout way. I met Houston through a gentleman I talked about with Tommy Tuberville, this guy Mike Whalen, who produces different events for our military and helps them out as they're deployed. And Houston was a buddy of his who had gone on one of Mike's foreign tours to visit the military. And he was going to go on this one to the Middle East that I joined, along with Chris Creighton and a few other coaches that we'll talk about later. Troy Calhoun was with us. And I got to know Houston getting ready for that event, and he was going to go with us. But then some people might remember the whole issue that ended his coaching career at Ole Miss. So he did not go, but he sent his 2 daughters who went, and my job was to make sure they were safe. So I from a father's standpoint, I got to know Houston, really enjoyed working with him, you know, long distance. He lives just north of Dallas. I live southwest of Fort Worth. So, you know, we've gotten to know each other from being in the same region, and just impressed with what he did as a player, as a coach. Then he was with CBS for a number of years, and just a great, great guy. You know, really takes seriously his position in the world of college football.
There's definitely a lot of takeaways from this one, and Patrick and I will be back to give you the winning edge takeaways following the episode. Here's Patrick's conversation with Houston Nutt. What you see on tape is a direct reflection of what you teach and how you teach. Video is important, but if you don't teach well, you're not going to like what you see on your video. First Down Playbook has been helping coaches teach better for 13 years. It allows you to present installs, playbooks, and practice cards in half the time with NFL quality. Coaching tools like video pairing, a player app, practice schedules, and wristband sheets have made First Down Playbook a program management system with everything in one place. If you're in a position of leadership with your football program, receive a free 1-week look at First Down Playbook. Call them at 512-814-6158 or visit them on their website or social media. Mention Coach and Coordinator Podcast or use the coupon code COACH24 to receive a $100 discount off the normal $700 First Down Playbook team membership price. Links and the phone number are in the show notes.
Welcome, friends. This is Patrick Steenberg, founder and president of Global Football, host for your podcast,
Kileleni to the Summit.
Today, I'm joined by a great friend from North Texas these days, a longtime college football coach and now a broadcaster with CBS Sports, Houston Nutt. Coach, where do I find you today?
Patrick, you're going to find me in McKinney, Texas, just north of Dallas. If you don't know where that is, northern part, right past Plano, Allen. Then there's McKinney. It's a good place.
Heck, back in your playing days at Arkansas, you could have thrown a pass from your house to mine, right?
I don't know quite that far, but hey, we're not too far apart.
No, we're in North Texas. Hey, I want to dive into a number of kind of philosophies today, and based on your background as growing up and into college and then coaching. We got a lot of people listening out there, students, student athletes, coaches, parents, that I think would be interested in your thoughts. Tell me first, growing up in Little Rock, maybe about one of your mentors or a couple of people who really gave you some great guidance.
Yeah, it starts with mom and dad, Patrick. My mother and father were teachers there at the Arkansas School for the Deaf for over 32 years. My mother was an English teacher. My father was the basketball, football, track coach, and bus driver. And I was the oldest of four. And I was the gym rat. And like all my brothers were. And one of my responsibilities after a basketball game, I was to hand out the bologna sandwiches in the cardboard box. And I looked forward to it because I knew after I handed out the sandwiches, there's going to be one left. I said, Dad, there's one left. He says, that's for you if everybody's gotten one. And that big old thick bologna sandwich was real good. But here's what's interesting about the deaf school, my playgrounds, Patrick. I don't know if people realize there's only one deaf school in each state.
Okay.
And so the girls and boys that are deaf growing up, they have to leave home at the age of 4 and 5 years of age. And what I love so much about the deaf school family, and I live 3 blocks from there in Little Rock. The deaf school is located on West Markham. I lived on Rice, 3 blocks from it. And it didn't matter if you were Native American, African American, Asian, Mexican, white. It didn't matter as long as you could sign, you were in the family. And of course, my grandparents were totally deaf. My father comes from a deaf background. And so we were signing really actually before we could talk. And so I love those experiences growing up there at the deaf school. And, you know, they couldn't say, hey, Johnny, you couldn't say, hey, Johnny, throw me the ball. You had to keep your eyes open and your mind focused because there was nobody talking. There might have been a bunch of, maybe a few grunts or yells here and there, but there was nobody that could communicate unless you could use sign language. And so that was really some great days and nothing like it. Charles Ripley was another one that's a Hall of Fame coach. Though he's my junior high school coach. We won a lot of championships, football and basketball. Bernie Cox, Joe Fred Young at Little Rock Central was the first integrated school. And so I remember vividly a lot of parents were coming to my mom and dad's house, trying to convince us to go switch schools, once busing started, to go and change to a private school. But, my dad wouldn't have any part of it. They said, no, you're going to Little Rock Central High School. And this is the area we grew up in. This is where you're going to go to school. And really is one of the best things we ever did. And I'm a very fortunate victim of circumstance because of that growing, the raising that I had from mom and dad, and then the coaches that I was surrounded by.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about, as coaches, overcoming adversity and taking on challenges. You growing up around those deaf kids, you had to watch them overcome it every day, right?
No question. And what I love so much of it, they had so much pride, and they wanted to please, they wanted to achieve. And my dad was so natural, such a great coach. And remember this, Patrick, my father played for 2 of the greatest basketball coaches in the world. He played at Kentucky for Adolph Rupp, and he played for Henry Iba at Oklahoma State. And his roommate on the road was who? Another Hall of Famer, Eddie Sutton. And so my dad, the little deaf boy, he had 3 deaf brothers, 3 deaf sisters, mother and father totally deaf. And so those deaf kids that you're talking about, there was nothing like when he went and got these guys a job after they got out of high school, the sense of pride and accomplishment it's just unbelievable.
So he was around it in his family, brought it to you as a child and your brothers, and then gave back to that whole community. Yeah, he was around some decent coaches, wasn't he?
He really was. Hall of Famers.
How about, and I know you had a great high school career playing football and basketball and went on to Arkansas, but you've had to overcome some adversities yourself in those years. Talk a little bit about that, Houston.
Well, I feel fortunate because I was highly recruited coming out of high school, and I had probably over 250 collegiate scholarship offers, and one of them was Bear Bryant. And Paul Bear Bryant, of course, was from where my father was from, Fordyce, Arkansas. And I used to love listening to my uncles and my dad talk about how Bear Bryant's father would be with my grandfather, my dad's dad, and they would be in a wagon. And you're talking about poor now. They would go collect firewood. They would make these little mayonnaise sandwiches or tomato sandwiches or peanut butter sandwiches and sell them for a penny or 2 pennies. And you hear all those things, and it goes back to the work ethic and the attitude, and it's just phenomenal. So Bear Bryant was recruiting me, and I never will forget, he'd called and he said, "Hey, listen, we're going to be a couple of hours late. We're down here in Fordyce, Arkansas. We're visiting some friends, and I will let you know we get close." I said, "Okay." So what do my brothers and I do? We go out in the backyard and we start playing hoops. We'll start playing basketball on an 8-foot goal. And, we're working on, of course, our Jerry West and Dr. J moves and all those things. But all of a sudden, Patrick, the ball, this is a volleyball, and it bounces over our fence. The wooden fence was 6 foot high. It was about 10 to 12 feet from that goal, where that we put that goal on that tree. They went to a tree. That ball bounced over the fence, and there he was with a houndstooth hat. And I said, "Coach Bryant, we didn't know you were there. Hey, my mom has dinner prepared for the visit, and we'll go on in." He says, "No, I want you to finish the game." I said, "Well, Coach, you really don't want us to?" "Yeah, my brothers, we're just playing 2-on-2, best of 7. He looks at me, and remember, he's tall with his houndstooth hat on, looking down. He says, "Boy," I said, "finish the game." By gosh, we finished the game, man. And I tell you what, he walked in the door and he looked at my mom and dad and he says, "Hey, I got 4 scholarships for these Nutt boys." And I mean, right there, he had us. Hey, we're going to Alabama.
Wow.
And, but the very next week, growing up in Arkansas, there was so much pressure to stay in Arkansas. My mom and dad worked for the state, and Frank Broyles comes in, and Frank Broyles is the Southern gentleman, and he's 6'2". He's thin, and my mom had roast beef, mashed potatoes and gravy, homemade rolls, a slice of apple pie, and then he's eating everything. And my mom, I never will forget, says, "Hey, Coach Broyles, would you like another slice of apple pie?" And immediately, and I know he's full, immediately he says, "Yes, ma'am, I would, and I need the recipe because I want to take it back home to Barbara."
Oh boy.
Well, now all of a sudden, Patrick. Now last week, my mom says you got to go to Alabama. I mean, Bear Bryant for Fordyce, you got to go. He's going to take care of everybody. And now I really like Coach Broyles. I said, "Well, Mom, you said last week we're going to Alabama." I think you got to really, really reconsider. Well, it just shows you, how good they were. And it taught me really one of the first lessons of recruiting I didn't realize is, hey, you don't ever say no to food. And that's you want a direct connection to a mother, you eat seconds. And it was just a great time. And then the other story that I love to tell is when I go to the campus of Alabama, we're in the living rooms. Early signing date periods already happened, so I was the only recruit on campus. And all, I love that Mal Moore was recruiting me along with Lewis Campbell. And Mal Moore said, "Listen, we had Kenny Stabler, Joe Namath, Richard Todd. If you want to be a quarterback, this is where to go." And of course, those were some of my heroes. You talk about Joe Namath and Stabler. Sure. Well, we're sitting in the living room. We're watching Alabama basketball team play. We're watching them play Mississippi State. How about this? I never will forget. Alabama's down 7 points with 1:37 left. And all of a sudden, Coach Bryant stands up in the living room, and Mary Harmon, his wife, sweet lady, Mary Harmon says, "Paul, you're not going to do this in front of company, are you?" and he doesn't say a word. He just starts moving, and Mary Harmon starts to explain, Houston, you got to exchange seats with Paul. I'm going to exchange seats with Mal. He thinks he's magic. He's got to change the course of this basketball game. Lo and behold, they're down 7 minutes with 4 seconds left. Alabama's up 2 to win the game.
Oh my!
And it's just that magical moment, right there. I think, man, this guy is magic, But I thought it was so funny the way Mary Harmon said, "You're not going to do this in front of company, are you?" But just great coach. And then you go to Lou Holtz, and I had the privilege to play for Lou Holtz, Jimmy Johnson, and Eddie Sutton, and Eddie Sutton's assistants were Pat Foster and Gene Cady. But the thing about Lou Holtz, though, Patrick, is he held you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
He held you accountable. And when you talk about mean what you say and say what you mean, he was a spectacular coach that motivated, had discipline. And man, you came to work with a knot in your stomach because you knew, hey, I was a grad assistant, but I was coaching the fullbacks full time. My responsibility was that fullback, and it better be right. And so it's just some great teaching moments and some great times with some great coaches.
Now, some amazing mentors, that you had growing up around you, from your parents to those historic coaches.
As coaches, we know that some of the biggest hurdles to our team's success can come from off the field. Your team needs support to tackle the endless list of expenses, uniforms, training equipment, travel, and more. But raising that money can feel like a full-time job. Thankfully, there's Vertical Raise. Vertical Raise is the premier online fundraising platform using innovative technology to create the easiest and most efficient system available. Raise more money in less time with a local fundraising coach who works with your team every step of the way to customize the ideal fundraiser. With options for online donations, digital discount cards, premium product sales, and even spirit shops, Vertical Raise has top-of-the-line solutions for every fundraising style. To find out more, visit verticalraise.com and we'll get you connected with an exclusive offer on your first fundraiser. I've always been interested in the use of technology to make our jobs more effective, so I'm excited to continue sharing modern football technology with you here on the podcast. This innovative system leverages tendencies to improve self-scouting, game planning, and in-game decision-making at the speed of the game. Modern football stands out because it's a battle-tested platform used by teams at all levels, like 4-time national champion Bishop Gorman, the 5-time California state champion Folsom Bulldogs, 6-time Texas state champion Lake Travis, Cal football, and the CFL's Grey Cup champions, the Montreal Alouettes. So book a demo today to see why these teams trust modern football technology. Visit www.teammofo.com/demo and mention Coach and Coordinator Podcast or use the coupon code CC10 to receive 10% off your first year.
Hey, right now I've been watching, this new series that's on the documentary, Michael Jordan, and it made me think about, as you were talking about, some of the impact that people had on his life. The greatest basketball player of all time. I don't think anybody will ever argue with that. Have you had a chance to be watching that and catch any of the stories there?
I did, and I'm glad you brought it up. I've been watching. I was just amazed. How you watch the intensity of Michael Jordan and how he held everybody accountable to a high standard, and you better be hustling. And the way he coached those guys was awesome. Scottie Pippen, being from Arkansas, he's from Hamburg, Arkansas, went to UCA, a little small college, and he grew. He started out as a manager. You're talking about overcoming. He started out as a manager and grows 6 to 7 inches, and all of a sudden he's one of the top 50 players in America. But I tell you what, Patrick, the thing that I love the most about the show, everybody talks about Michael's, and I love that, and the stories about Scotty, and I love that, the championships, I love that. But there's a segment in that show where Michael Jordan comes home crying, either in the 9th or 10th grade, because he's been cut, and goes to his mother, really upset. And I love Michael Jordan's mother, never met her, but I love her because of this. She looks at Michael and says, Michael, you need to work harder. And I said, man, what a lesson. This lady really made to me all the difference in Michael Jordan's life because of those words. How many times do we hear, Patrick, of mothers running to the coach to set an appointment? Some of these helicopter moms run, hey, I gotta have a meeting with the coach. You did my boy wrong.
Oh yeah.
And here we have Michael Jordan's mother saying, hey, Michael, I know you're upset. Looks like to me you need to work harder. Man, I just have such respect for that. And you look at the world, especially here in the last, say, 10, 15 years, when things don't go right, it's always, I confess it's your fault. And where you have a mother, and probably a lot like the mother you and I had, daddy that you and I had, that, times have changed because you don't always get that. I remember vividly, there's always 2 or 3 moms that were just really upset. And all they had to do is say, work a little harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Without that mother's guidance and direction, Michael Jordan could have been, just a cut basketball player his sophomore year, and nobody would have known his name.
Such a good point, Patrick. You're exactly right. I mean, that to me is a difference maker. It's a difference maker. Just that one sentence of those special words of, hey, go work harder. And man, this guy work, he changed his body, and you could tell he was always had this perfect 6'6", but he was thin coming out of high school. And then you look at the way his body changed. He did it by work ethic and commitment.
It's a classic story for everybody. I'm glad you're able to relate that one a lot. Speaking of that, you coached a lot of years at some great schools, 3 times SEC Coach of the Year, and 98, you were the National Coach of the Year, Arkansas, Mississippi, Boise State. Tell me about a couple teams, and it may not have been those that really won a lot, but some teams that overachieved that maybe you looked at in spring ball going, well, we're going to be okay, and then they took it on. You got a story of a team or two in that realm?
Yeah, that's a great one. I want to go to 1998. I just get to Arkansas from Boise State. Danny Ford was the previous head coach, who's a Hall of Famer. He recruited some good guys, but they'd been 4-7 and 4-7.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed when I first got there, Clint Sterner, Brandon Burlsworth, who sadly passed away. There's a movie out on him right now called Greater. Anthony Lucas. I remember going to the trainer who'd been there a long time, Dean Weber. I says, Dean, I look at these guys walk in a weight room, walk in the cafeteria. They look the part. What's the problem? Well, Houston, they don't think they can win. And then I noticed too, after each, whether weight room, each practice, no matter what happened then, they were quickly to get in their car and they were gone. And they didn't all live under one roof. When that's the times have changed. Where when I played, we all lived under an athletic dorm. Well, those days are no longer. You can only have a certain amount of guys live there, so the freshmen lived there. Well, my point is, they were so They were such individuals. They didn't want to be together. And I remember telling Clarinda, she was the assistant, my secretary. So I said, hey, set a sign up. I want everybody to come visit with me 101. And I noticed of 105 young men, there's only about 37 signed up, and I said, hey, how many of y'all, did y'all get the message? I said, I wanted y'all to sign up and come meet with me. Well, there's a couple of guys I knew that hadn't signed up yet, and they missed study hall one night. So at 10 o'clock, I started heading to their apartment.
Yeah.
So I went to knock on the door, and I knocked on the door, and they said, who is it? I said, it's Coach Nutt. And the response was, yeah, right. Get out of here. And so I knock on the door again, and all of a sudden they say, who is it? I said, it's Coach Nutt. And now I hear shuffling in the room.
Oh, yeah.
We're trying to move some things around. And so they finally opened the door and said, Coach Nutt, it is you. What are you doing here? We've never had a coach come see us at 10 o'clock at night. I said, I've come to see you to help you find your watch. Tonight you had a 7 o'clock study hall. You had a mentor that you missed. And we had 22 guys doing it the right way. But you know what the tutor said walking out the door? Another missed meeting, and that's why these Razorbacks will continue to get their butt beat, because they don't do what's right. Now, the 22 that were doing it right had to hear that because of you two knuckleheads. And so we're going to pay a price tomorrow in front of the team. And I tell you what, from that day on, when they were doing those seat rows, and really, I don't want to get all into it because you had to have some trash cans out there because they had to throw up a little bit. But it was such a good time where they finally said, we need to get together. We need to do things the right way. And all of a sudden, we get on this roll and we're 4-0. We're playing Alabama. Sean Alexander's coming to town, and they've been on a roll. And we hadn't had too good of a week. And Brandon Broyles played the right guard for us, and he was 6'4", 320. He was a walk-on at one time, but now he's a big senior. And I never will forget Wednesday night. Didn't have a good practice that afternoon, and Wednesday night about 10 o'clock, we're coming out of the meeting. In our meeting room there is a 50-yard indoor turf. And as you come out, it's dark, and you hear shuffling of the feet. And I walk over, said, "Who?" And I got Joe Ferguson with me, Mike Marks, and my brother Dan. I said, "Who is this at 10 o'clock at night in the dark over here?" And I hear turf shoes on turf, and walk over there, and I said, "Who is this?" Brandon Burlsworth. "What are you doing?" "Coach, I had a bad day, and I wanted to make sure my steps are right with these powers and counters. I'm going through assignments tonight." I said, "Wow." So the very next night, Thursday, I meet with the team, and I said, "Guys, I know we've been pretty uptight, didn't have too good a week so far, but we're going to have a real good practice today. And I'm going to tell you something. You got a teammate that cares so much about you that he was over here in the dark last night, making sure that he had every assignment down pat with steps." Well, we got on this roll, and this team that was 4-7 and 4-7, they started believing in one another, started caring for one another. And it's amazing what happens when you don't care who gets the credit. They took off. We were on a roll, 8-0, 9-0. We were going to Rocky Top, and we're playing Phil Fulmer's Tennessee. We got the game won, Patrick. We got the game won, and we outplayed it for 58 minutes. We're trying to run out the clock, and that ball slips out of Clint's hands. They recovered it and scored. And they go on to win a national title. But I tell you what I love the most, though. It went back to that dress when all the reporters right there looking for blame. Whose fault was it, Clint? It's my fault. And then Brandon Burlsworth said, "No, it didn't. I stepped on his foot. It's my fault." And then the deep snapper said, "Hey, I snapped it over the punter's head first time in my life. It's my fault." So you could tell right there we had one heartbeat. And so that team is a special team, and I was really proud of them,
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. And it starts, you held them accountable. Right? You could have just let it go and say, "All right, we got 22 guys, we're fine." But you made the extra effort, did your job as a coach to hold them accountable, and then they accepted that challenge and
that's
went
right.
on.
That's exactly right.
How about some within the teams you've had? How about a couple special leaders? Obviously, Clint Sterner there to take response, and I can remember that game watching that because I was dying for you. But talk about, a leader maybe who you just said, "Boy, this guy, had it all."
I've had quite a few. I want to talk about Darren McFadden.
Okay.
Darren McFadden was really a 2-time Doak Walker Award winner, being the best running back in the country, and he came in second twice for the Heisman. I really thought the one year he really deserved to win it. But I want to give you a game. Really, it's my last game I coached at Arkansas. We're going to Baton Rouge. We're playing LSU. And there have been a couple of statements. I think there's one LSU had mentioned something about, "Hey, we're going to out tough them." And then there's one article that came out, "Hey, we weren't physical enough." So I asked, I'm really good friends with the baseball coach there, Norm DeBryan, and his office was right down the hall from mine. And I walked in, I never forget, sometime I'd go in and talk with him, and I saw a baseball bat there, a miniature baseball bat. And it had a Razorback on it. And I thought, man, that's it. So I went to Dean Weber. I said, "Dean, ask Norm DeBryan where he got those baseball bats. And I want to put on there with the Razorback emblem, or Razorback, I want to put 'Bring the Wood.'" And so that first night when I meet with the team by myself, he had 80 bats. We can only travel with 80 people. So I had 80 bats. And at the end of the deal, I didn't speak long. I never will forget. I said, look, we're going to Baton Rouge. Y'all know how tough it is. All I ask you to do is play as hard as you can play. And I said, I got one thing I want you to do, though. I went over to open the door and the bats fell out. And I picked up one of these bats and I says, I got a bat here for you, but here's the thing I want you to do. Don't pick up this bat and take it with you on the plane unless you mean it. And there's 3 words on there. It's called bring the wood. I want you to bring the wood. I can live with anything that happens. I know they're the number 1 team in the country, and they got about 100,000 people, but they can only put 11 out there at a time, and I want you to bring the wood. They got so pumped and brought that wood. Well, Darren McFadden takes his bat. Everybody takes him on the plane. Well, Darren McFadden comes out in pregame warm-up, and the state trooper at the gate right next to Mike the Tiger says, where you going, young man, with that bat? You can't do that. I'm bringing the wood. No, not on the field. And so I go, I notice there's a little confrontation. I says, what's going on? Coach, your player wants to bring a baseball bat, and he can't bring a baseball bat on the field. And that's like a weapon.
Yeah.
I said he's not gonna use it on anybody. He's just gonna, Coach, I'd rather him not take it. So anyway, long story short, Darren McFadden sneaks his bat on the field. We win the game in 3 overtimes, and I don't know if you remember in CBS. There's a Tracy Wolfson's interviewing me. Darren McFadden comes up and he interrupts the interview and says, "Coach, no, we brought that wood. We brought that wood tonight." And LSU goes on and wins the national title. They got beat by us that night by 3 overtimes, but they go on and win the national championship. And it just shows what happened with a leader that held everybody accountable, and they took those words. We're bringing the wood. We're being physical.
Right.
And that little illustration with that bat, it's amazing how many times when I run into Arkansas people, Coach, we're going to bring that wood. It just kind of resonated. And it was because of the leaders that we had. Jonathan Louigs was a Remington Award winner. He was a center. You had Felix Jones, Peyton Hillis, Marcus Monk. You had guys that really loved one another, that cared for one another. But I tell you what, that night, though, Patrick, they brought the wood.
Yeah. Well, that's just perfect imagery, that you were able to come up with. And that's what everybody needs sometimes, something, just a physical item, something you put on your refrigerator, on your desk or whatever, and now you've moved on to CBS Sports and you're broadcasting, doing an amazing job. But give me just kind of a final closing here. We've got some young men, young women out there today, maybe that are feeling a little sorry for themselves, that, I can't go to the gym and work out, or I'm a little sleepy and, I'm not getting where I want to go. How about a little Houston Nutt, just hold yourself accountable talk?
Yeah. You know what, Patrick, I'm glad you brought that up. I work out with a couple of these 10th and 11th grade quarterbacks sometimes, and their dad had asked me about talking to a couple of them. So I've talked to a few of them, and it's amazing. And here's what I would say. You know what? That's why you got to embrace what you do. I know that weight room base, there's some times that I'd say, man, you really didn't want to lift weights. You really didn't want to go through practice. But now that it's taken away from you, you're not promised tomorrow. And so the next time you get to go lift weights, you better embrace it, because it's the best days of your life, and you don't know when it can all stop, when it all comes to an end. I can't tell you how many times a player comes to me, Coach, if I had one more series. Had a guy last week when I coached at Murray State said, Coach, those are the best days of my life. I wish I had one more time that I could go through a two-a-days, which I dreaded and hated so much, but I wish I could do it one more time. All those days that you dread and you feel sorry for yourself, I'm going to tell you, when you go back this time, go embrace it. We're going to get back. We're going to come back, and you got to love every second of it, because it's so short. It's gone so quick. And you got to embrace those times, and hard times are good. And not that you don't like going through it, like right now. You don't like this. We want everybody to get well and get healthy. But that just goes, when we do get back, let's go a little bit harder, and let's go a little bit stronger, and embrace every second, every minute.
Oh, that's perfect, Coach. Houston Nutt, appreciate your anecdotes, your history, your philosophies. You've been a great friend over the years with me and my family. And Appreciate you taking the time.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Patrick, like I said, some great stories in there. When you hear about Bear Bryant, you hear about Coach Broyles. This guy's had some incredible experiences, and there's certainly a lot to take away. So what were the things you took away from this one that can help other coaches out there?
One of his key tenets was holding players accountable. As a coach, and everybody knows this, you're not really their friend, right? I mean, you want to work with these young men. That's why we do this job. But he talks a lot about you've got to hold players accountable for their actions, and it's what they do on the field. If they let the defensive end go on a 3rd and long and your quarterback gets sacked, you're going to be held accountable. But it's also how you hold them accountable off the field, how they're dealing with their academics, with other people around the university. He talks a lot about that, and basically it's setting clear expectations and then consequences. You've got to be a disciplinarian as a coach. That's just part of your job as a mentor and as a coach. And Houston talked about that a great deal. Again, as with most of the coaches, at embracing adversity. You got to encourage your players to take on the challenges, the setbacks. There are opportunities for growth and for improvement, and Houston deals straight up with that. And you've got to emphasize the importance of resilience, determination, going towards that ultimate goal, that highest lofty peak, that summit we talk about, embracing the adversity, not running from it. And then your job as a coach really, and as a leader, is to inspire and motivate players. We're dealing with, the high school coaches with 15, 16, 18-year-olds, the college coaches with, 19 to 23-year-olds. They're not always inspired. Every day they're not motivated. And as a coach, we've got to do that. And Coach Nutt talks about that a lot, by leading by example, not just being out there talking to them, but have your own strong work ethic and provide encouragement and support for those players, building that trust, a positive team environment, all of those things that help you win more football games and help you develop better young men for the world. And Houston understands it and loves to share those with people.
Patrick, I continue to be entertained, and I learned from these conversations. Just can't thank you enough for allowing us to republish these on Coaching Coordinator, and I look forward to next week's as well. Be sure to check out our partner Global Football at globalfootball.com. And for your fundraising needs, check out Vertical Raise at verticalraise.com, an innovative platform which we'll be sharing more about here on the podcast. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.